President Xi Jinping meets Antony Blinken in Beijing. Cathay Pacific to hire Putonghua-speaking flight attendants from the mainland. And Labour representatives stage a walkout during today's Labour Advisory Board. Good evening, and thanks for joining us. President Xi Jinping met with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken in Beijing today. Xi describes Blinken's discussions with other Chinese officials during the current visit as candid and in-depth. Earlier today, Blinken also held talks with Wang Yi, director of the Office of the Central Commission for Foreign Affairs. Wang underlined China's stance on Taiwan, telling the U.S. there will be no compromise. David Garrett reports.
Xi Jinping shaking hands with US Secretary of State Antony Blinken in Beijing. Then at the head of a long table, the president commented on Blinken's timely visit. Blinken, on the left, listened as Xi's statement was delivered in Putonghua and then translated.
Director Wang Yi and State Councillor Qin Gang have met or held talks with you at length. And generally speaking, the two sides have had candid and in-depth discussions. The Chinese side has made our position clear, and the two sides have agreed to follow through the common understandings President Biden and I had reached in Bali. The two sides have also made progress and reached agreement on some specific issues. This is very good.
Xi was referring to a meeting with US President Joe Biden in Indonesia last November. The Chinese leader, sounding positive, went on to say he hopes Blinken's visit can be a step towards stabilising China-US relations. The relationship has been strained in recent months. It's been a busy 48 hours for the US Secretary of State. This was day 2 of intense talks and negotiations in the capital, crucial for China, America's first high-level trip here for 5 years. The world watches on to see if divisions can be healed. This morning, Wang Yi shook hands with America's top diplomat. They moved into a larger room. Their conversation lasted longer than expected, but there are clear differences. Wang told Blinken he believes America has the wrong perception of China. He reiterated there is no room for compromise on Taiwan. Beijing says Taiwan is an inalienable part of China. Blinken spoke to Wang about what he called the responsibility of managing the competition between the world's two largest economies. Blinken tweeted about the importance of open channels of communication. He emphasised this to Wang again today. America's top diplomat had a similar message for Foreign Minister Qin Gang when they'd met yesterday. David Garrett, TVB News.
Meanwhile, Premier Li Qiang and German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier held talks and signed bilateral documents in Berlin. It's the Premier's first trip overseas since taking office in March. After Germany, he'll head to France. The war in Ukraine was the focus of the conversation. Business matters were on the agenda too. Germany's economy is heavily dependent on trade with China. Climate change discussions are expected to be a major focus of meetings too. Li will meet with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz later. Back locally, Cathay Pacific Airways is going to implement a series of new measures to improve its service quality, including recruiting Putonghua-speaking cabin crew members from the mainland. This came after 3 Cathay flight attendants were fired over remarks that were deemed discrimination against non-English-speaking passengers during a recent flight from the mainland to Hong Kong. Mimo Sangai reports.
The discrimination scandal happened last month during a Cathay Pacific flight from Chengdu to Hong Kong, when 3 flight attendants were accused of mocking a passenger's English-speaking abilities. The incident was caught on camera and uploaded to a mainland social media platform. The airline's CEO, Ronald Lam, later apologized multiple times and promised to lead a task force to examine the company's service procedures and staff training. Today, Lam issued a statement to staff members of the airline introducing a list of enhancement measures to improve the company's quality of service. For instance, flight attendants will receive extra service culture training starting next month to promote a customer-centric culture among the staff. The company will widen Putonghua language coverage, meaning more mainland flight attendants will be recruited. Lam said the measure will first be implemented on mainland flights in August before it is introduced to other flights. All cabin crew members will be asked to wear name tags with their Putonghua and other Asian language abilities shown. Moreover, those who can speak more than one Asian language will be awarded with $400 as a monthly allowance. The CEO, nonetheless, stressed that the airline's cabin crew will remain mainly local employees, even after introducing mainland flight attendants to the Cathay community. Memos 9, TVB News.
Hong Kong's unemployment rate between March and May remained at 3%. According to the government statistics, there are around 113,000 unemployed people in the city, which is 1,300 people fewer than the previous figure. Meanwhile, the unemployment rate in sectors related to consumption and tourism remains unchanged at 4.2%. Secretary for Labor and Welfare Chris Sun believes the labor market will continue to improve as economic conditions get back to normal. To ease the city's labor crunch for lower-skilled jobs, the government is set to relax the import of such workers to Hong Kong. During the meeting between the government and the Labor Advisory Board today, labor representatives staged a walkout, slamming the scheme's impact on local laborers. Starting next month, the government will remove the import ban on 26 low-skilled jobs, a scheme that will last 2 years. The vetting process for these imported worker applications will be streamlined as well. The government held a meeting Monday with the Labor Advisory Board, the government-appointed consultative body comprising both labor and employer representatives. Just 3 hours into the meeting, a walkout staged by 6 labor representatives. Decrying the 2-year plan as unacceptable, Lam Wai Kong, vice chairman of the Federation of Trade Unions, said the government offered no data or objective analyses to back the import decision. For instance, no statistics are given on how many vacancies there are for each low-skilled job type. Tam Kam Lin, another labor rep, added the import relaxation will deal a huge blow to grassroots workers, including homemakers, trying to re-enter the job market after the pandemic. They said the new scheme allows employers to bypass the Labor Advisory Board's case-by-case scrutiny on import applications, diminishing its gatekeeping role. Also, there's no expiry date for the government's target to import 20,000 construction and transport workers. With that, they urge the government to include sunset clauses on the scheme. The employer side, meanwhile, welcomes the importation plan. The representative RNC said there has been fair tripartite collaboration among the government, the labor and employer sides. He added employers would naturally prefer local hires, and the government will review the plan every half year, and that could help gauge the effectiveness of the scheme. In the U.S., a spate of shootings over the weekend have left at least 6 people dead and dozens injured. The shootings happened in suburban Chicago, Washington State, central Pennsylvania, St. Louis, Southern California, and Baltimore. Experts say there has been a surge in homicides and violence in the United States in the past few years, that accelerated during the coronavirus pandemic. Tracy Furness reports.
Shortly before 12:30 a.m. on Sunday, June 18th, DuPage County Sheriff's deputies were in the area of Honeysuckle Rose Lane and Route 83 and heard numerous gunshots fired and responded to an area where a large gathering of people was happening.
I was laying in bed and then I heard a helicopter go overhead, and then my mom knocked on the door and was like, "What is going on outside?" So then I got up and looked out the window, and it was just chaos. There were sirens coming from like every direction.
The celebration had attracted a large number of people to the parking lot just 39 miles outside of Chicago. Meanwhile, 1 teenager was killed and 9 others wounded in St. Louis, Missouri. The teenagers were having a party in an office space when shooting broke out around 1 a.m.
The scene investigation revealed numerous shell casings from multiple firearms. Multiple firearms were recovered at the scene, including AR-style rifle pistols as well as a handgun, which was found in the possession of a person of interest who's a juvenile, which was taken into custody by plainclothes detectives responding immediately to the area.
This Father's Day, families across the St. Louis region woke to the news of yet another mass shooting. Initial reports of 10 of our babies shot downtown and a young life lost. It's every parent's worst nightmare, tenfold. And my heart goes out to all of the families in pain today.
Tracy Furness, TVB News.
In Uganda, funerals were held for 42 victims of a brutal attack on a school by suspected extremist rebels linked to Islamic State. 38 of the dead were students, 1 was a school guard, and 3 were civilians. The school was in a border town just 2 kilometers from the Congo. Some students were burned beyond recognition. Others were shot or hacked to death after militants armed with guns and machetes attacked a secondary school. It is believed 6 students were abducted to the Congo. The Ugandan president described the attacks as criminal, desperate, terrorist, and futile, and vowed to deploy more troops on the Ugandan side of the border. Still ahead, both Russia and Ukraine suffer heavy losses amid Kyiv's counteroffensive. The manager of a fast food restaurant injured in yesterday's knife attack remains in serious condition in hospital. And the last of the pair of giant rubber ducks in Victoria Harbour bows out of Hong Kong. Welcome back. Russia and Ukraine are suffering heavy losses as Kyiv's forces try to push enemy troops out of occupied land. The Ukrainian military said Russia had carried out 43 airstrikes, 4 missile launches, and 51 attacks from multiple rocket launchers over a 24-hour period. Nasir Karim has more.
Ukraine and Russia both say they are holding the upper hand in Kyiv's counteroffensive to retake occupied land in the east. Their claims cannot be independently verified, but what both sides acknowledge is that fighting is fierce. Russia says its forces have repelled Ukrainian attacks in Zaporizhia. According to British military officials, it is one of 3 focal points for intense fighting, the other 2 being Bakhmut and western Donetsk. They add that Russian casualties are at their highest level since the peak of the months-long battle for Bakhmut, which Moscow eventually captured. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky praised his troops for turning back Russian advances and making small gains, saying the counteroffensive was proceeding well. Zelensky is determined to fight on and refuses calls for a ceasefire after the latest peace initiative, this time by a group of 7 African leaders, appears to be petering out. The African contingent on Saturday met Russian President Vladimir Putin, who told him that Moscow's annexation of 4 regions in the east and the Crimean Peninsula was non-negotiable. Zelensky, who met the delegation on Friday, said the visit showed that only a complete withdrawal of Russian troops from captured territory would enable peace. Meanwhile, the United Nations has accused Moscow of refusing to help residents in Russian-controlled areas affected by massive flooding caused by the breach in the Kakhovka Dam. The June 6 collapse of the dam sent floodwaters across southern Ukraine and areas of Kherson controlled by Moscow. The death toll is now 52, of which 35 people died in areas held by Russia, with 11,000 residents evacuated. Both sides accuse each other of blowing up the dam.
In Britain, homicide detectives are leading an investigation into the deaths of 4 members of the same family in West London. The bodies of 2 adults, both in their 30s, and 2 children aged 3 and 11 respectively, were found in a house in Hounslow on Friday. Crime scene investigators, some wearing protective suits and others carrying photography equipment, could be seen entering the property on Staines Road on Saturday. Officers were called to the scene shortly after 3 p.m. the day before by a person who was concerned for the family's welfare. Police named the deceased as Mikhail, Monika, Maya, and David of the Vodarchik family. Police say they are not currently looking for anybody else in connection with this tragic incident. Back locally yesterday, a 29-year-old employee of a fast food restaurant attacked his 38-year-old manager with butcher knives after the 2 had a work-related argument. Police arrested the suspect while the wounded manager is undergoing treatment at hospital. His condition has improved from critical to serious. Timothy Lee tells us more.
Shutters down and business closed. Armed police surrounding the crime scene. That's the scene of the restaurant where yet another of the recent string of knife attacks happened. At around 3 p.m. yesterday, police received reports of a knife-wounding incident at a fast food restaurant on Hill Road at Saiwan. The attack resulted in the restaurant's 38-year-old manager sustaining serious injuries. Authorities said the suspect and victim both worked at the restaurant as an employee and manager, respectively. Owing to work performance-related issues, the 2 engaged in an argument before the employee quickly left the restaurant. He then went to a nearby butcher shop where he took two 30-centimeter long knives and returned to the restaurant to strike a superior in the head. He escaped from the premises soon after. Mr. Wong, who owns the butcher shop where the suspect stole the knives from, noted that at the time of the incident, his wife told him that two of their knives were missing. This vegetable stall employee said she heard someone yelling about a knife attack nearby, and later saw a man running across the street drenched in blood. The police said the back of the victim's head and neck suffered 8-centimeter and 10-centimeter long slashes, respectively. His skull also sustained fractures. He was sent to Queen Mary Hospital for treatment. Footage released online showed the manager covered in blood, but he managed to call for help and remained conscious, while his colleagues were in shock. Armed police officers and counterterrorism units later captured the 29-year-old suspect near Devou Road West. As you can see behind me, the restaurant where the attack took place remains closed. The victim of the knife attack remains in serious condition, with representatives of the fast food chain expressing shock at the incident. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
A 39-year-old man arrested in connection with the murder of two women at a Diamond Hill shopping mall last month is said to be capable of making a plea in court. That's according to his psychiatric reports. The defendant faces 2 counts of murder after 2 women were stabbed to death at Hollywood Plaza. This morning, the case was mentioned at Kwun Tong Magistrates Courts. The prosecution presented the defendant's 2 psychiatric reports, saying the man is fit to make a plea. At the request of the prosecution, the magistrate adjourned the case until October 9th, pending the victim's autopsy reports. The funeral of typo murder victim Abby Choi continued into its second day. The ceremony was conducted at Tai Wai's Po Fook Memorial Hall, where pictures of Choi adorned the premises. Pink served as the event's theme color, as sources say it was the former socialite's favorite color. Large numbers of friends, family, and celebrities paid their final respects this morning. As the funeral was conducted in a Buddhist ceremony, monks were seen entering the funeral parlor to perform the funerary rites. Choi's body was then escorted to Polin Monastery on Lantau Island for cremation. The Fire Services Department is planning to adjust its recruitment process, giving more time for prospective firefighters to prepare for fitness tests. In an interview with the South China Morning Post, Director of Fire Services Andy Yeung revealed there are now 110 vacancies for fire station officers. Yeung says some 40% of candidates eyeing the captain post have been disqualified because they couldn't pass the physical fitness test. Under the adjustment, fitness tests will be moved to the final stage of the hiring process. That would give applicants an extra 5 months to prepare. Another plan is to relax visual acuity requirements, allowing firefighter hopefuls to wear glasses during the recruitment process. The last of the pair of giant rubber ducks in Victoria Harbour bowed out of Hong Kong today. The exhibition officially ended yesterday. One of the ducks were deflated last night after being on display for 10 days. Some citizens came to bid farewell to the solitary 18-meter rubber duck. The Double Ducks floating exhibition by Dutch artist Florentine Hofman was cut short by around a week earlier than planned. Organizers said this was due to unexpected challenges, including the sweltering weather and rising operating costs. A similar show 10 years ago was much longer. It lasted around a month. And that's the news. Thank you for watching.